President Yoon Suk-yeol kicks off day one of his state visit to the U.S., seeing the first outcome of trip, some $2.5 billion investment by global content platform Netflix. And another critical outcome underway on the security front. Presidents Yoon and Biden are set to release a statement on the U.S. extended deterrence commitment for South Korea. 28 South Korean nationals safely evacuated from conflict in Sudan are set to arrive in Seoul this afternoon. Good afternoon. We'll start with President Yoon Suk-yeol in Washington, D.C., kicking off his state visit to the U.S. with some sales diplomacy. The president has secured a major investment for the domestic content industry, marking the first outcome of the visit. Our top office correspondent Oh Soo-young reports from the U.S. Capitol.
As the self-professed #1 salesman of South Korea, President Yoon Suk-yeol hit the ground running in Washington, D.C. on Monday afternoon, securing an investment of some $2.5 billion by global content platform Netflix in a meeting with the firm's CEO Ted Sarandos.
이번 투자는 대한민국 콘텐츠 산업과 창작자 그리고 넷플릭스 모두에게 큰 기회가 될 것입니다. 넷플릭스의 파격적인 투자 결정을 진심으로 환영합니다.
The investment will be used for creating Korean content over a stretch of 4 years.
I have no doubt that our investment will strengthen our long-term partnership with Korea and Korea's creative ecosystem. We are deepening our partnership with the Korea creative industry, which have produced such amazing hits as Squid Game, The Glory, Physical 100. With the partnership, we will continue to grow with the local industry while sharing the joy of entertainment with Korean storytellers and their fans around the world.
This comes as part of Yoon's mission to broaden and deepen bilateral ties in areas beyond traditional security. Stepping off Air Force One, President Yoon Suk-yeol began a state visit to the United States on Monday, showing how the two countries' relations have evolved over the past 70 years, from the Mutual Defense Treaty in 1953 to a much broader economic, cultural and technological cooperation. The theme of his stateside visit is the alliance in action towards the future. During a summit with President Joe Biden on Wednesday, the two leaders will not only address security issues to deter against North Korea's growing nuclear and missile threats, they are also expected to discuss ways to address a host of shared challenges and opportunities, with the goal of improving economic security through value-based cooperation. On that note, Yoon will attend events to foster partnerships in key strategic areas, including an investment forum and business roundtable focusing on advanced technologies, and a video content forum hosted by the Motion Picture Association. Going beyond the usual diplomatic outreach, the president will aim to encourage closer people-to-people exchanges across various sectors of society, speaking with not only state dignitaries, local politicians and business leaders, but also academics, scientists and students. US senators on Monday welcomed the South Korean president's arrival with a resolution proposal, endorsing efforts to turn the state visit into a chance to further strengthen the alliance. The bipartisan resolution is expected to be up for a vote on Tuesday. During his time in the land of the free, Yoon will emphasize the two societies' shared values of freedom, liberal democracy and human rights as the basis of their ever-tightening alliance. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
Also on the first day of his state visit to the U.S., President Yoon Suk-yeol met with South Korean nationals in Washington, D.C. In celebration of the 120th anniversary of Korean immigration to Hawaii, the president stressed that the Korean-American community had played a vital role in strengthening the Seoul-Washington alliance. Noting how Korean-American legislator Andy Kim was re-elected for a third run during last year's midterm elections, Yoon said overseas Koreans have shown excellence in all areas, including politics, the economy, society, media, and cultural arts. Focusing on the U.S. Capitol, Yoon said Washington, D.C. was the place where activists and intellectuals Pil studied medicine in the late 19th century. He noted that the area served as a cornerstone for the founding of the Republic of Korea, as former President Lee Seung-man formed a provisional governmental committee there. Yoon also said that the government will launch an agency for overseas Koreans this June to connect some 7.5 million South Korean nationals to their motherland. Now with the state visit underway, the scenes around the U.S. Capitol make it clear that President Yoon Suk-yeol is in town. Our Kim Do-young reports.
On Monday, South Korean flags were flying in parts of D.C. alongside the U.S. and District of Columbia flags. President Yoon Suk-yeol's state visit, the first one in 12 years for a South Korean president, has begun.
This is the second state visit hosted by President Biden, the first foreign leader from the Asia-Pacific. The South Korea-U.S. alliance is the most successful alliance in the world history. The two overcame much through economic development and democratization.
As previous South Korean leaders have in the past, President Yoon will be staying at the presidential guest house, also known as Blair House. You can see it is now under heavy security with a large South Korean flag on display, a reference to the occupants for the next 4 days. And it's not just the scenes in the vicinity of Pennsylvania Avenue that are special. To celebrate the milestone 70th anniversary of the two countries' alliance, South Korean government-run buildings have put up special pictures. At Embassy Row, Washington, D.C.'s Korean Culture Center is displaying an image of a South Korean soldier from 2023 and a U.S. soldier from 1953 holding flags side by side. Underneath, it reads freedom and solidarity, the core value that the two countries have formed their alliance on. Deep in the heart of D.C., the old Korean legation on Logan Circle is also showing a smaller version. According to an official at this Horse Top office, these setups have been planned to remind the two countries of the past as well as to plan out a future together with the same spirit. The White House has also been busy preparing for the state dinner that follows the summit on Wednesday. For the main chef who will oversee the food served, the White House has chosen Edward Lee, a Korean-American chef. According to his recent interviews with local media, he is expected to merge Korean and American dishes to celebrate the alliance. As for the entertainment, there will be performances by Broadway stars including Norm Lewis. Kim Do-young, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
The upcoming Yoon-Biden summit will see a critical outcome on the security front. While the U.S. has been vowing to use all means to deter a North Korean attack on South Korea, there will be a statement where Washington will reassure and enhance its extended deterrence commitments to Seoul. Our Kim Jung-shil has the details.
On Wednesday, President Biden and President Yoon will announce major deliverables on extended deterrence, on cyber cooperation, on climate mitigation, on foreign assistance, on investment, and on strengthening our people-to-people ties.
That was U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan speaking to reporters in Washington, D.C. on Monday. And when asked about the details of the deterrence statement, the White House official refrained from giving too many details.
What I will say is that we believe that that statement will send a very clear and demonstrable signal of the United States' credibility when it comes to its extended deterrence commitments to the Republic of Korea and to the people of Korea.
Sullivan's comment has prompted questions by watchers on what this future commitment to extended deterrence could mean. How different would it be, if at all? During the second meeting of the two leaders back in November, President Yoon said there's a need to effectively and drastically strengthen extended deterrence between South Korea and the U.S. in line with North Korea's advanced nuclear capabilities. Yoon's remarks may have given us a hint of what Wednesday's statement might be. Although the full extent of the deals won't be known until the announcement is made, multiple South Korean media agencies quoted a diplomatic source on Tuesday who said the two countries are in the final stages of drafting a document that would allow retaliation with U.S. nuclear weapons if North Korea launches such an attack on South Korea. Some reports are calling it a Korean-style nuclear sharing pact, with South Korea able to negotiate with the U.S. on the operation of American nuclear weapons if deemed necessary. The deal would be different from NATO's nuclear sharing agreement, as U.S. nuclear weapons would not be deployed in South Korea. All eyes are now on Wednesday's statement and what changes it may bring to deter Pyongyang's nuclear and missile threats. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
In the meantime, South Korea and the United States have simultaneously slapped sanctions on a North Korean banker tied with the regime's illicit cyber activities. This comes amid growing concerns over the regime's use of virtual asset transactions to fund its weapons development. Choi Soo-hyung has the details.
South Korea and the United States on Monday decided together to impose independent sanctions on North Korean individual Shim Hyun-sop. Shim has been involved in supporting North Korea's illegal cyber activities to raise funds for the regime's nuclear and missile development. This is the first time that Seoul and Washington have both simultaneously imposed sanctions on the same individual in the cyber field. The measure was taken based on close cooperation between the two allies to effectively block North Korea's illegal cyber activities. Shim Hyun-sop is affiliated with the North Korea Kwangsun Banking Corporation, an organization that was subject to sanction by the UN Security Council in 2016. Shim is accused of creating anonymous accounts and money laundering to procure funds for North Korea's nuclear missile development. He laundered millions of dollars of illegal funds, including cryptocurrencies obtained by North Korean IT personnel who violated UN resolutions by residing overseas illegally and financially supported them, contributing to North Korea's illegal cyber activities and procurement of weapons of mass destruction. This is the sixth round of sanctions against North Korea under the Yoon administration. With this, the South Korean government has targeted 36 individuals and 41 institutions since October last year. Both South Korea and the U.S. have reduced damages by freezing and confiscating cryptocurrencies that North Korea has stolen. They have worked closely with the private sector to block the anonymous accounts of North Korean IT personnel and to recover some of their illegal profits. According to Ministry of Foreign Affairs, South Korea will further strengthen cooperation with allied countries such as the U.S. and the private sector to block any future North Korea's illegal foreign currency earnings, including illegal cyber activities. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Among the itinerary for President Yoon's state visit is a stop at the Korean War Veterans Memorial on Tuesday, joined by hundreds of veterans and service members. Our Choi Min-jung takes a look at the significance of the visit, marking the 70 years of the Seoul-Washington alliance.
Presidents Yoon and Biden, joined by the First Ladies, are set to visit the Korean War Veterans Memorial in Washington on Tuesday. The memorial commemorates more than 30,000 Americans who sacrificed their lives during the Korean War. President Yoon plans to commemorate the sacrifices of the war veterans who devoted themselves to South Korea's freedom and peace, and talk about the history and meaning of the nation's alliance through the war. He is also expected to underline the importance of advancing the alliance into the future. The presidential office also said the leaders will celebrate the 70th anniversary of the Seoul-Washington alliance, together with the grandson of highly respected General Van Fleet and the daughter of Korean war hero General Baek Sun-yup, who have been invited as special guests. President Yoon is scheduled to hold a thank you lunch with 300 figures that represent the past, present, and future of the Seoul-Washington alliance. They include Korean War veterans, families of the bereaved, and service members of the United States Forces Korea. Yoon will also be awarding the Taeguk Order of Military Merit to 3 Americans who fought for South Korea in the Korean War. This is the highest decoration for military bravery and valor awarded by the South Korean government. The three awardees are retired Army Colonel Ralph Puckett, who led the 8th Army Ranger Company during the battle for Hill 205, retired Navy Captain Elmer Royce Williams, known for his solo dogfight with 7 Soviet pilots, and late First Lieutenant in the Marines, Baldomero Lopez, who saved his subordinates' lives by smothering a hand grenade with his own body during the Incheon landing. The award will be handed to a nephew on behalf of the late Lieutenant Lopez. This state visit appears to put great emphasis on the two countries' security alliance, as this is the first time for a South Korean president to award a military order outside the country. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
There's also a much anticipated outcome on the science front, as the two nations are planning to expand their bilateral cooperation into space. Our Shin Na-young has more.
Strengthening space cooperation is one of the centerpieces of the South Korea-U.S. summit. To expand into the space economy, South Korea's government has been long working with the U.S., the world's top nation in the space sector. And on Tuesday, President Yoon Suk-yeol will be visiting NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, marking the 3rd time a South Korean leader has visited a NASA center. During the visit, President Yoon will meet with Korean-American scientists and receive a briefing on the importance of space for addressing climate change. Citing a White House official, Reuters also reported that South Korea's Minister of Science and ICT Lee Jong-ho and NASA Deputy Administrator Pam Mulroy will be signing a pact to boost bilateral cooperation in outer space. This will be a milestone for the two countries to strengthen studies in space telecommunication and lunar exploration, as well as Seoul's participation in NASA's Artemis program to return astronauts to the moon.
South Korea signed up to participate in a program to explore the moon and Mars about 2 years ago, but it was a belated contract, so the country has barely contributed to the program. So we expect the government to discuss ways to strengthen this partnership.
As President Yoon plans to establish a National Aeronautics Administration, or Korean version of NASA, this year, reportedly more details on bilateral cooperation are set to come out. The Yoon administration has been showing increased ambition for making inroads into the space sector at a time when North Korea has been developing its first military spy satellite. Part of the South Korean business delegation visiting the U.S. expects the two countries to further discuss establishing a joint venture between Korea's pharmaceutical company Boryong and America's privately funded space infrastructure developer Axiom Space. Shin Na-young, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea and the U.S. are celebrating 70 years of their alliance leading up to this summit. We take a look at the very beginning of relations, as well as how they stand now and will move forward in the years ahead. Our Shin Se-byuk talked to some experts.
The year 2023 marks the 70th anniversary of the ROK-US alliance, which began in 1953 with the ceasefire of the Korean War, as well as the Mutual Defense Treaty. Over the past 7 decades, the alliance's core interest has centered around ensuring security on the Korean peninsula while countering continuous threats from North Korea, as well as the rise of China. One expert explains that the longevity of the alliance comes from a sense of need on both sides. The U.S. is able to lower the risk of major conflicts, while South Korea can promote peace in the region.
If there's an American presence in this part of the world, then that has the effect of tamping down, making it less likely that there will be conflict emerging among different countries. There's an American presence here that can have an effect that can promote both peace and democracy.
However, these days, the two allies are striving to broaden their cooperation beyond security. During the first Yoon-Biden summit in May last year, the two presidents agreed to upgrade their bilateral relations to a global comprehensive strategic alliance. This means the two allies are committed to further broadening their traditional security alliance to encompass other sectors such as the economy and tech. While the two are working together to deepen their partnership in the coming years, the same expert points out that South Korea may face a balancing act between the U.S. and China amid the growing geopolitical divide.
Politically, Korea has very close affinities with the U.S., yet geographically, of course, and historically, Korea has very strong connections with China that also continue in the economy. The efforts to navigate that balance are unending.
Though South Korea faces such a daunting task, the expert says the U.S. is only to become even more a valuable partner in line with South Korea's growing presence on the global stage.
As Korea's position in the world has changed, I think that has rendered South Korea to be much more of a partner with the United States in dealing with a lot of bigger global issues: environmental degradation, and climate change, species extinction.
In the years to come, the partnership between the two countries will continue to evolve and deepen, not just in terms of traditional security issues, but also in tackling the world's most pressing challenges. 신세벽, 아리랑 뉴스.
The South Korean economy recorded a growth in the first quarter, shifting from a contraction in the previous quarter. This comes amid an increase in private spending, but the ongoing trade deficit remains a concern. Our Lee Soo-jin has more.
South Korea's economy grew in the first quarter of this year compared to the previous quarter, despite the downturn in the global economy. Data from the Bank of Korea released on Tuesday shows that the country's gross domestic product, adjusted for inflation, is estimated to have risen 0.3% on quarter during the January to March period of this year. This is a turnaround from the contraction recorded in the fourth quarter of last year. This means the country avoided going into recession, which is typically defined as 2 consecutive quarters of economic contraction. The country's GDP had been growing since the third quarter of 2020 before contracting in the fourth quarter of last year due to plunging exports, a key driver of the Korean economy. The central bank attributed the growth in the first quarter to a recovery in private consumption. Private consumption rose by 0.5% thanks to an increase in spending on recreation activities, restaurants, and accommodation. Investment in construction also increased by 0.2%. Facility investment, on the other hand, shrank 4% as demand for semiconductor equipment and machinery dropped. Meanwhile, South Korea's gross national income, the total amount of money earned by people and businesses, also rose 0.8% as prices of major imported goods, such as natural gas, fell. The Bank of Korea hinted that it may adjust downward its 2023 economic growth projection, currently at 1.6%. The nation has seen an on-year decline in outbound shipments since October last year due to the ongoing slump in the semiconductor industry and has logged a trade deficit since March last year. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
A working paper co-written by a group of university professors says greater exposure to social media increases bank run risk, citing the recent collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. The paper does a deep dive into the cause and effect of social media in the SVB case, particularly to tweets linked to the bank between January 1st, 2020 and March 13th, 2023. The research paper noted that mentions of SVB increased during the run period, causing more panic. The paper also added that other banks could also face similar situations where panic could be exacerbated due to such sentiments spreading through social media. From conflict-hit Sudan, South Korea has successfully evacuated 28 of its nationals, and they're set to arrive in Seoul this afternoon. Our military affairs correspondent Kim Hyun-sung reports.
Codename Promise. South Korea's evacuation mission that pledged to bring people out of Sudan and into safety has kept its word. All 28 South Korean nationals were safely rescued, as well as some Japanese citizens. This was a complicated undertaking that took 10 days to plan and execute. The mission started in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, on Sunday morning. The team of evacuees first traveled by bus to Port Sudan, the country's eastern port city. These two cities are 850 kilometers apart, which would usually be a 13-hour drive. But as the team navigated through Sudan's difficult terrain, taking a longer route to avoid the worst of the fighting, the drive reportedly took all day in searing heat. They were also in a race against time. Sudan's paramilitary group had only given a 72-hour window of peace on Friday to mark the start of the Muslim holiday, Eid al-Fitr. But even this ceasefire was not properly upheld. The bus reached Port Sudan on Monday afternoon. From there, the team boarded the South Korea-dispatched military aircraft C-130J and flew to Jeddah Airport in Saudi Arabia. All hands were on deck for this mission. Special forces had been deployed. The ship Chungmugong Isun-shin from South Korea's naval task group, the Cheonghae unit, had also been dispatched to nearby waters in case the aircraft couldn't take off. South Korea's multi-purpose air tanker, the KC-330 Cygnus, also flew to Jeddah to take people home from there. All 28 nationals went aboard the flight. They're set to arrive at Seoul Air Base on Tuesday at about 4 in the afternoon. Back in Sudan, the warring factions have agreed to another 72-hour truce, starting midnight on Monday. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Monday that after 2 days of intense negotiations, the groups have agreed to put the fighting on hold to ensure the safe passage of Americans and foreign nationals out of Sudan. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Nationwide spring rain is soaking the entire country. The capital will see sprinkles, which won't be enough to ease the dryness in the air. A dry advisory remains in place here. Meanwhile, Jeju Island could see up to 30 millimeters of rainfall into tonight. We also need to dress a bit more warmly as that rain brings down the highs to the much cooler side. Afternoon highs are going down 3 to 7 degrees lower than yesterday, hovering in the low teens this afternoon. So it should not feel much different from the wake-up temperatures today. Much cooler than season norms all day under murky skies with rain, but we are welcoming that good air quality nationwide. There will be light passing rain tomorrow morning in central areas, then sunshine and warmth return toward the end of the work week. Now the weather outlook in Washington, D.C., where the South Korean president begins his official state visit on Tuesday. Mostly sunny skies becoming cloudier in the afternoon with balmy afternoon temperatures. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.